Hey,
Hey, Bence.
hey, how you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Yeah, I'm recording it now. So welcome. So this technical glitch.
Yeah, the point of this session was to really vibe code and build something as we go. And then just, I think Stas agreed to share his screen and we can get going to try an idea of building an event page. And as we go, there's like a few ideas that we can start adding that I've explored with like competitor research and stuff. But basically, it's just going to be a free flow conversation. And as we go along, Bence, you can add any trips or like any hints that you think are going to make it even better. I think we're going to use Lovable, Stanislav. Are
Yeah,
we Lovable or Cursor?
that was the option I wanted to showcase for two reasons. One is I think it's fairly easy for new people who are not familiar with like
Absolutely.
tech part, but also what I noticed it has a pretty long chain of thought, which allows to like code more in more time. So it will take time to build more features at once, but you can one shot like bigger projects and then figure things out. So I thought that would be a good combination. Not to go into a lot of details with Cursor because I believe Cursor is like more of a an AI layer for people who are familiar with code rather than people who just want to build something. So I think Lovable is like a pretty good middle ground.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
All right, I'm gonna. Oh, I need to send a request for sharing
Where are you based then at the moment?
in Kiev, in Ukraine.
Ah, okay. Okay. So it's not too
So
late for you.
basically, for everyone who have never seen how Lovable looks, it looks almost identical to every other AI, LLM, you name it, tool with a chat box in the center. And then you can just type whatever and just get things rolling. Not to waste a lot of time before we go into our idea. Like it suggests like a music player. I'm not even reading the prompt, but like a pretty good starting point. What I usually tend to suggest to people who are like getting started with the whole thing, so is just to give anything and then to see how it will respond. Because in a lot of cases, like the thinking process is more interesting than the end result, because the end result can be changed very quickly a lot of times with no technical ability. But what I started like looking for is what does it try to do and what's the thinking process when I'm not being over detailed. So in this case, like the prompt is very minimalist. It's like one, if I were to give such a task for someone at work, they would probably never do it because it lacks a lot of details and nuance to it. But this thing, it can do some conclusions itself based on whatever it's trained on. And it says it has some features for the first version, like album artwork, playlist management, audio control, whatever. Some of these are be like not even needed, but I can figure it out like later on. But what it's currently doing, it's writing the code, and we can also drop into this section, not to like, even if you're not a technical person, don't be shy to like just look into it, because it basically starts doing them one by one. You can see what it does. You cannot understand if you're not familiar with CSS or JavaScript or TypeScript, but it does not matter at this point because you can just notice, like you can witness the whole process of the system doing the work. So it basically from the prompt, it outlined the plan, and based on this plan, it's trying to build components. So we can see it has the component for now playing, for the layout, for a track list, and whatever. Like a bunch of things we need for this UI to work and for this product to solve the problem. While it's on the job, one little thing I wanted to tell about what Lovable I really enjoy is in the top right corner, basically the process of hosting your final result that you're happy with is as simple as just like clicking publish, which is something I think a lot of people struggled with before. When you're using some sort of software that for site building or whatever, it's always a question like, how can I put it into the world? like how can people access it? And what I love is you basically click the publish. Every single time you republish, it will just update. This way you can basically just work on the idea, iterate, and this will always be available via the same link. So it's very as like SaaS style interaction. So it's if you've ever used, let's say, Notion or Google Docs or Figma, it's basically the same idea. You just republish and there you have it. But also one nifty thing is the Supabase. Without going into much detail, Supabase is just the database solution that just integrates with Lovable, and you can build like not only the UI, the front end, let's call it, you can build like fully functional thing which will record something in the database. So for instance, if you are building like an event product, which we'll try to build today, you might need the database because if you want to like store events somewhere, if you want to store comments or likes or user profiles, this is what you're going to need. And once again, this integration just makes things easier. You don't have to know a single thing about backend just to get some value from it. Okay, so it thought for 4 minutes and 16 seconds.
Can I have a quick question, Stan?
Sure.
What's your experience with Lovable? Because last time when I used it, end of last year or even end of last summer, you could get into infinite loops of errors. Is the product now more mature? Do you use it for production level things?
Yeah, sometimes I do, and I think it's just much better. So they're iterating, and the number of errors it does is, I think, it dramatically improved. And also, like one thing I noticed, if you are a designer by chance and you're using Figma for your mockup phase, where you do the UI work, there's a plugin called Builder.io. Basically, it's available via, I think, builder.io, but I'm not sure. But you can type plugin Figma, and it will take you to the plugin itself. It looks somewhat like this. And this plugin basically allows you to transfer Figma files into Lovable, not in the form of images, but it will look into the structure. It will see the auto layouts, the typography, the paddings, margins, whatever. And the quality of this transform is just much higher. So if you need something specific and you have the design or someone on your team has the mockup, I would highly recommend using this one because it just, speeds things up. But generally, yeah, I think Lovable is much better than it was before. And yeah, first,
Great.
let me see. So we have something. Basically, we have 4 sections clearly working. None of them was described by us like really detailed. And this is one of the pitfalls, I think, with the AI tools. Before, they used to say 1% for idea, 99% for the execution. But this time, the execution is like equally available for everyone. So like everybody could build this, what we did in 4 minutes and 16 seconds. But I think one important moment is thinking before prompting on what exactly you want to build or like figuring out on the go. I use both approaches. Sometimes I spend 20 minutes drafting the prompt to the Lovable, and then it thinks for 2 minutes and does everything correctly because the prompt is detailed and well thought through. So think of it as if you were writing it not to the AI, but to the real person. Because usually when you're trying to convey the task to a real human being, you would structure it. You would need to think of, okay, what should I need to miss and which things are absolutely have to be described in very specific details. So in this case, like I appreciate the search UI, like can be improved, but generally this is something I would think of probably and just maybe with some minor changes. But the create playlist is definitely something I would do differently. So maybe I would like not have it as a separate page, but rather create it as a button, make it a call to action and open some sort of pop-up. Let's say I have this idea. So one thing that Lovable allows you to do, and I really love this about this specific tool, is this little edit button at the very bottom left. So you can click it and it allows you to like specifically point at thing you want to improve. So in this case, what I want to do I want to specifically point at, I can do it differently. I can point at the item and make it a call to action, or I can go from the page, but I will go from the item. I think it can work better. So
this is incredible. It's a very good point that you highlighted this edit button, because the cognitive overload on you in VS Code and cursor, it's enormous, because you need to find the same text in the code as on the front end, and this saves you hours.
yeah, totally. And this time I'm gonna tell it, create playlist, a green button, not a link. On click, open the same, and I'm specifically saying with 2 input fields, playlist name and description, because I know that whenever you're leaving some room for hallucination, it would hallucinate like most of the time. So I'm gonna be very specific. Open the same UI, but inside of the pop-up. Yeah, and I'm gonna just send it. What I'm trying to do, I'm trying to change this little thing from the link in the sidebar to the button, and on click, I want to see all of the same content basically, but in the form of pop-up, just to change the interaction or the user flow or whatever I want to do. And so while it does it, I can easily go through other parts of the product. I can see that it used correct elements. So for instance, for a volume change, it guessed, like it decided to use slider or whatever custom code there is. But yeah, I pretty much enjoy it. Like functionally, it's more than good for 4 minutes that we spent on it. And obviously you can iterate further. Okay, so we have a button, not liking the hover, too dark, but can be changed easily. But now, okay, let's get out of the edit mode, go to full screen, and voila. Now we're clicking create playlist, we have the pop-up. So the interaction is different. Everything is different. It's not like a separate page right now. It's a different way to get people to create playlists. And I don't know if it does create playlists. I don't see them, but it does some sort of
Probably
feedback.
Supabase.
Maybe, but also I don't see it anywhere in the UI, so that's not a problem. We can iterate it further. But one thing I want to do before jumping into our like bigger project, bigger idea is this one. So we're gonna publish it and see if it works. And basically it will just work the same way, but as a separate website available via this link that we see. You can use a custom code, a custom domain if you want. So I think it's available in a paid plan, obviously, but for testing purposes, you don't need one. So you can just use this. And
You can connect GitHub as well for further teamwork and handout for development if you want.
yeah, totally. Like you can just export it to push it to the GitHub, and then you will have a ready-made link that your engineers will take and do whatever with it. So if you're building not something for yourself, but rather exploring how to implement Lovable or AI in your daily work routine and you're not a technical person, this can definitely be the tool. So you can basically prototype with English language as your programming language this time. Then you will basically get a working code that your developers can get into and maybe get some ideas from it, and then write it clearly in the code base. You can prototype yourself. You can, if you're creative enough or if you have some design background and you're a PM, for instance, well, you are now free to prototype without anyone limiting you in terms of timeline. You can just move with the speed of thought. And over here, you can basically see it's clicking, the pop-up works. Some things are messy, but we can definitely make them work. So yeah, this is
amazing.
This is a very little short demo of the Lovable as a tool.
There was something else I wanted to mention on the point of testing. So right now, any PM can prototype a whole flow, but also can test it, because right now Lovable connects with Optimal Workshop. So all you need to do, you go to optimalworkshop.com, you paste the link of your prototype you've built with Lovable, and it's going to be tested with real users. And you can jump in and watch the live sessions. So it's like a full-on end-to-end product discovery that you can do within a day.
That's amazing. Yeah.
So
And how
one
do you
little, sorry, go ahead.
Just a question about Optimal Workshop. Is it something you guys use on a daily basis, or what's the?
So I use usertesting.com on a daily basis, but it's not to say that you still can use a Lovable prototype, which is way more clickable, interactive, to test it on usertesting.com. You just still use a link. But the integration with Optimal Workshop, I don't use just because we don't pay for it as a company. But I think it's amazing. Like if you connect those two tools, now you're finally getting like almost end-to-end process validated. I feel like what is missing is just a connection with like business goals, and then you have a whole design team at your disposal at a speed of a day.
Yeah.
And what I usually tend to do with Lovable or any sort of tools I'm using to write code for me is mostly to just get people's opinion on things. So even if you're just exploring whatever, in my case, it might not only be the design prototype. Sometimes I have a little startup idea or a business idea and I want to validate it. So this time I can prototype like the concept and then show it to someone and ask a bunch of customer development questions, like understand if there's a need we're covering with the solution, if they're willing to pay, if there's something I'm missing as like a creator of the product. I think one of the encouraging aspects of using these tools is if you have idea and the courage to push it to the moment where it's like solving a real problem, you can now do it with less limitations. Because basically before, the limitation was always if you're building a tech product, it was always if you knew a developer or engineer, or if you had money to fund this engineering team. And now I think what I see myself is a lot of people, a lot of non-technical people, or people with like little technical knowledge, they start to build things because now you can get to a certain point without anyone. You can basically solo build like whatever if you have the skills, the idea, the courage, the taste. So you can basically get to a point where it's like an MVP to say the least.
The taste is a real currency now, isn't it? The quality of your ideas and the actual taste. So we say that design is going to be replaced, but how can they? Because like normally designers take ages to develop good taste in things and to understand how to distinguish good customer experience from bad, something that is looking good from something that is looking bad. And that taste, I feel, is becoming the gold mine. And if you have that and you have good quality of ideas, now basically you can do anything because as Stas is saying, you're not limited. You don't need to have a development team now. You can visualize your ideas.
Agree. And all the emotional intelligence inside your app, you can add more spice to them, what was impossible before, like budget restrictions and the distribution as well. You have to make noise around your product. So many levels. We wanted to speak about the Albina. You had an agenda.
Yeah. We have 6 minutes left on this call. So I wonder, we can definitely share like our biggest wins from what we've done with AI over the last weeks or something. But also we can try and build that event app that there's a lot of ideas I've outlined and we can just see how it goes in Lovable. Maybe we can connect them.
You can start sharing your wins while I pull up the sharing and just start building at the same time because we can do it now.
Yeah, so I think the biggest win for me last week was actually very interesting because I'm doing the new category images for the navigation for the grocery store and Deliveroo. And we were very limited with stock images that we are given. And usually it would take a designer a good 2 weeks to create like a new imagery for all the catalog, like different grocery items. And this time, I think I managed to do everything in like 4 days with all the like other stuff and meetings. And all I needed to do is to pull the brand guidelines that we have for all the images, the angles, the shadows, the style of the images, and then uploaded the images that we have as an example. And it generated such high quality assets that I swear to you, like on Shutterstock or Unsplash, I wouldn't even find. And it was so consistent, so up to the point, and even the shadows The reason why I am impressed is because before, every time the image generation would take you so long, it was inconsistent. There was a lot of like glitches, but this time even the shadows were fixed. Like you need to go through iterations, and every time I would ask to generate like a new image asset, I would have to remind the blind lines. So it's, as Stas saying, you need to give a lot of context to leave very little space for hallucination. So every time I would remind transparent background, the right shadows, like you have to be like a parrot. You don't assume that this thing will remember what you want. But as a result, like the quality of images were stunning. And the like we don't even need, I think, long term to spend tons of money on image photography anymore, because right now it's at the point of generating the images just as good as our like photography studio, which is like insane.
Insane. Yeah.
Insane. So I'm just genuinely impressed that we reached that point where image generation is very easy, very consistent, and it literally does the job. It was never the case before.
And how about the physical thing, like keeping the veggies and meat and stuff
It was
accurate?
doing everything perfectly. Like every asset, every little jar. I even asked it to make it in the style of British groceries, Waitrose store, which is very famous. And it used the exact same bottles and exact same style of like cups. And then you can iterate. You can ask to remove branding or add branding or change the colors. You can fine tune it to such detail. But the beauty that I was impressed and stunned is just the quality and consistency. Like it will generate the same and like position the angles right, because we have a specific angle from which we shoot from the top, and it would use the same angles. And I honestly I'm impressed. I didn't think we're going to be in this position.
Great.
What about you,
So-
Beth?
Biggest wins is I learned a lot about the Roo. It's a kangaroo icon. It's a plugin or extension you can download for Cursor, for VS Code or for Windsurf. So it's compatible. It's everything which is VS Code based. Roo, this tiny kangaroo works as a plugin. And it's a very interesting product because it's made for full stack development. So sometimes if you are stuck with your tool, you can go over and ask this kangaroo that can you do this and that for me, and it's agentic. So the big win, the big keyword is agentic. It's not always clear for everybody what it means, but it means that based on a certain documentation, the system goes through it like an orchestrator, a bug fixer. You can have a designer, an accessibility compliance officer. So you can build up your team, and Roo gives you a kind of a basic default factory team, but you can add more team members to it, like different agents, and build the product for you. Very similar to what Stan was demonstrating with Lovable, but now you can add more team members. You can have a chef photography expert team member, as Albina said, to just look at the photography in your app. And it automatically checks all the images. So you can, and it's the sky is the limit with this agentic kind of working.
And do you train it yourself? So if you create like a designer, you need to give a description, an outline, what kind of skills that person possess. So how do you add them? How do you train the different team members in this Roo plugin?
You can just prompt the plain English the same way. So you can build a designer agent as you want in your own, based on your own experience. So just copy it from somewhere, from GitHub. There are some directories that you can copy from. Everything is open source. People share. So it's really cool.
Awesome. So Roo plugin for Cursor.
For all the tools, including Cursor. Yeah.
Awesome. Stanislav, your biggest win.
I think I started being more technical and like digging deeper, not broader. So I'm not really interested in the new tools that are coming out. Honestly, couldn't care less, because most of them are just copycats of other tools doing like one thing differently. But one thing I think one of the biggest wins is I managed to like basically self-host the open source model. So like whenever you're using Lovable or whatever, it just connects to some other providers like OpenAI or Anthropic or anyone. And I was always curious, since the model is on their side, the biggest I can do is learn to prompt it. But I cannot control the results as much as I want to. And I just found out you could just set it up on your computer if you have enough space, and if you're you can do it on your laptop as well. So it's not like a server you need to have at home. You can basically do it on your laptop. And so I self-hosted a lot of things and just played with it, tried fine-tuning the model, tried using different sources of data and seeing how it will respond, what's better, what's worse. And I started noticing that first, it's not as complex as I thought it would be. But then it's just, I understood that if I were to build like a true AI product with where the core of AI has to be specific, this is probably something I would definitely have to do. So I would not use ChatGPT API for that because it's limited in terms of what I can do with it, what data it's trained on, and et cetera, et cetera. And I was pleasantly surprised with the results. So it was not as accurate and not as reasoned as it would be in these big models, but it was good enough. Like for some tasks, it was pretty decent, but also the price of it is like so much less because you're running it on your computer and it can do it. And also it's secure. One of the things I was interested in is like, how can I play with AI but keep things secure? And this is the only way because it's on your computer, nothing leaks anywhere. Whatever it produces or whatever data you're putting into it, it's not on OpenAI server or Anthropic server. I'm not like too worried myself about the security of my data that I give to the LLMs. But if sometimes you don't want to show maybe some business goals or some code, you don't want to expose some strategic stuff. And that was cool. So yeah,
Very good
that's
use case. Yeah.
Did you manage to train it well for the specific purpose that you had? I imagine that's the big benefit because you can train it on specific documents and it will very well answer to a very specific goal that you have in your product instead of
well,
generic, unpredictable answers AI in ChatGPT can give you.
in my case, it was like I wanted to like completely take in a different set of data and just run the whole training process and just wait for hours and see what happens. So speaking of working with the files, I think you can do a lot with existing available models. AI allows you to retrieve information from documents pretty well. If they're well structured, the results are huge. But I wanted to just get deeper and understand like how does it work from the core? What's underneath, what's inside of the core of all the things we enjoy. And no particular use case I wanted to like make, no particular product I wanted to build. I just wanted to see what's inside of it.
Play around. And
Yeah.
what do you prefer, like open source models, if you can name one of these providers? Is it
Yeah.
Llama or is it
Yeah,
DeepSeek?
it was Llama because it was like one of the best ones that are open source, and that it was installed with this ollama.com, which allows you to get up and running with like large language models. So it's like the tool that you install, and then you can, using this tool, you can basically download any open source available model and do whatever you want with it. So I think that was the one I used, and I really I played with the Llama 3.3 and with the DeepSeek R1, the Chinese one.
Yeah, yeah, it's an amazing field, even just experimenting with different models. If you look at Hugging Face, you can have like thousands of different models that you can play with. So you need a lot of, you need time
Yeah, that's true.
for this. But yeah, and you can imagine that these can be fine-tuned for design, coding, text generation, anything like that.
Yeah, I think companies can be pretty creative with those tools. And one thing I can see is from the product and business perspective, if you want to build a truly AI based product, I think at some point it's just a question of the operation expenses you will have with all those APIs. So if you have a really popular product, let's say millions of users monthly, and you have anything that connects to the OpenAI and allows people to, put something and get something, that can cost like a lot of money. And if
True.
you have something your own, and if you have something from that is self-hosted, it's much more of a hassle because you have to set it up or your engineers have to. But then the cost of using it can be so much better. And that's one thing I noticed when I coded a mobile app, like in my free time. And I decided to play with Apple's machine learning models because they also have their own things only for their hardware, for the phones, for the iPads. And since it works on the device, the speed of work is so huge because you don't have to wait for a response technically because everything happens inside of the phone. And it was like you type what's 5 plus 10 and it gives you a response like immediately without even second thoughts. But then when you're asking like, can you tell me about this? It starts typing immediately. So it's like the latency less than half a second. So
cool. Yeah. Okay. I think that, Stan, you need to go as well. Thanks for that.
thanks for the chat.
Thanks, Albina.
It was amazing. Thank you.
Amazing.
It was super useful.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Gotta go. Thank you so much. It was nice meeting you, Bence and Albina.
Nice meeting you too. Pleasure. And talk next time soon. Bye.